Hello and welcome to this Affinity Photo tutorial. Now, the makers of Affinity Photo and Affinity Design and Publisher, Serif, every now and again will have a sale. Now, at this particular point when I'm recording this, they're having a spring sale, but they will do it on sort of high days and holidays like maybe Easter, Christmas, Black Friday and other times, and it's normally around 50% off. And when I went to the add-ons, I bought myself these vibrant paint strokes, and a bit further down here there's somewhere, where is it? The abstract paint bundle by Chroma. So I needed sort of an idea of how to use these. Now, in one of my magazines, they do these tutorials, and it was a Photoshop tutorial where they use these paint splodges to fill in a silhouette, and I sort of used that idea to make this image here. Now, I freely admit that it is sort of probably a niche market and it won't be really used that much. I mean, if you were making a poster for a dance troupe or something, you could use this particular silhouette, but you don't have to be a dancer. It could be anything. It could be, a shark or a house or a rhino, whatever, as long as it's sort of a silhouette shape. And you don't necessarily have to use paint splodges either, because I did the same sort of thing here, and I used smoke images to sort of fill in the silhouette. So the texture doesn't really matter as such, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So you can use whatever you like, and just to prove it doesn't have to be a dancer, this is one of a singer that I sort of just messed around with. But I'm going to try and recreate the Photoshop tutorial where they're using paint. Now, in that particular tutorial, they started off by showing you how to take the photographs of the paint, drop it into the water, and then to use those images to make the final picture. Now, as for the picture, I got this particular one from SubPNG. I will add a link to this. As you can see, it is a free download, so I will add a link to this, but you can use whichever silhouette shape you want. Now, again, coming back to the original Photoshop tutorial, in that what they did was they mainly used the liquify tool in Photoshop, which, although similar to what we get in Affinity Photo, it is probably a bit more advanced, I think, in Photoshop, because they could sort of follow the outline of the silhouette, which was a bit harder, I found, to do in liquify. And I freely admit that I'm not a big fan of the liquify persona, or very good with it, so maybe it could be recreated better than I could do it. I just deviated and went to clipping the textures to the silhouette rather than sort of using the liquify to get the effect. I think it still works quite well, and that is the way I want to go, but you could try using liquify to follow the shape if that is, you are good with that particular tool. So I think that is the end of the introduction, and I know this will probably be a long introduction, and I will mark in the description below at what point this introduction ends. So let's get on with the tutorial. One thing I did forget to mention was having a look at the two Serif items that I brought, and sort of how you can use them. Now, I've clumped mine together in a folder, but these are the two items that I brought, which was the vibrant paint strokes and the abstract paint bundle. And obviously they come as zipped files, and I've unzipped them, and like in the vibrant paint stroke you get some paint brushes, and you also get all the different images that you can use in the PNG format. Now in the Abstract Paint bundle you do get these asset files, and in the bundle itself you get all the image files that you can use, so you can either use them as assets or as these JPEGs. It's up to you how you want to use them. So basically that is that looked at. Oh, there's also the Vibrant Paint assets. So you've got asset files. So coming to looking at assets, if you come to the view menu, because by default the assets are not visible, and you come down to studios, you can then click on assets to turn them on, and then using this menu up here, you click on that, you can import assets, and you just have to navigate to where you have stored them and import them. And when they come in, so we've got the Abstract Paint Chroma volumes 1 to 5 and volumes 1 to 6, and the vibrant ones in my particular case are right down the bottom because they sort of go alphabetically, and then you have them there. So that is like the assets. And brushes works in a similar way, in the sense of when you come to the brushes tab over here on the right, menu at the top, import brushes, again navigate to where you have them stored, and then once you have them in, you can select the Vibrant Paint brushes. So that is how you can get the whatever you buy from Serif, the assets or the images or the brushes, into Affinity Photo. So now we will start the tutorial. Okay, so I've opened the silhouette file which I downloaded. Now there is one sort of problem with this particular silhouette, in the fact that it's not solid, sort of solid colour. As you can see, this section here, it's sort of very faded here and slightly faded just around it, and also down here in the toe area is just not a full solid black. Now I want this to be a full solid black, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the selection brush and select this dancer, and I pretty much got that in one hit, but you may have to do it in sort of sections to get the whole area. And then I'm going to come to the paintbrush tool, and we have black as our colour. Now this will just keep the paint within the selection area, not that there's anything particularly there to go over, but just in case there are any areas that it may go over if you weren't using a PNG like I am, selecting the area that you want to paint first and then paint in, it will stay within the selected area. So I think that's pretty much got everything there. So when I press Ctrl and D to deselect, we now have a solid silhouette, which is what I'm after. But I mean, your silhouette may already been solid to start with. And it also doesn't necessarily matter whether the silhouette is in black or white or some other colour, because you're going to be covering it with a texture anyway, but I just wanted it to be a solid selection to start with. So I'm going to start a new document, and I'm going to make this A5, and in the landscape orientation, and then I'm going to just copy and paste this into that document because I wanted a larger area. So I'll just right click this layer here, select copy, come to my new document and edit and paste. So I'm just going to come to the move tool, hold down the control key and come to a corner and reduce this in size, keeping the proportions right, and then I'm just going to quickly center this. If I can just find the lines, there we go. Doesn't have to be centered, but I'm going to start off centered anyway. So we now have the groundwork ready, so I can now get rid of that one, don't need that. And then all we're going to do is now add the various paint assets. So I'm going to come to the view menu, studio, and down to assets. Now I personally have made a shortcut for this, which for me is Alt A, but you could make it whatever you want, but I'm going to just use that way first of all. So, and I've opened up the Chroma volumes 1 to 5, and then it's just a case now of selecting a paint that you want. Now obviously I'm not going to be able to recreate exactly the trial run I've done, mainly because I may pick a different colour. Let's image, let's try this one here, and I'll click and drag this to my file, and I'll have to zoom out for this because it is a very big image. And again I will hold the control key and drag this down to roughly the size I want, press Control and 0, and then I'm just going to sort of roughly place it sort of going where that dancer has her legs spread sort of diagonally. And now I want to clip this to the image. Now there are various ways of clipping. I mean, the ones you will see most of all is to click and drag the file down and into the sort of silhouette file, but it is also just as easy to come to the arrange menu and just click on move inside, and that will clip that or make a child layer of that into the document. So all I've got to do now is just alter this. You know, I can have it, position it and get it however I want it to go. So yeah, I quite like the look of that. So now I want sort of a different paint splodge for the top half. Now this time I won't use the assets because not everybody likes using assets because they do take up sort of computer memory because they're sort of in Affinity Photo all the time, which is why it's good to have the JPEG versions of these as well. So if you just wanted to just use the images, you know, one at a time, not using up like the memory within the computer, and pick a different one. Let's try let's try that one. So that is now opened in Affinity Photo. Let me shut down those assets for now. So like before, I am going to copy this file, come back to my image, highlight the top layer. Now this time, because I've copied it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this icon up here which is insert inside the selection. I will click on that, and what it will do now is the next thing I do will insert it inside the selection. So the next thing I'm going to do is to paste. So that will now be pasted inside. So I just need to come to the move tool, and again zoom out, because these images are quite big. I'm going to reduce its size down, and then come out again. So right, so I'm gonna leave that there so it covers up this side here, and then I'm going to add another one for the other arm. So again, I'm going to use the assets, and let's try something from volumes 6 to 10. Let's have a look what we've got here. Let's try that one there. I'll zoom out, reduce its size. So much like before, I'm going to use the arrange and move inside, and let's reduce its size here, and I'm going to just swivel that round. And finish off, just stretch it out. So let me come back to here. Yeah, so I'm fairly happy with that. So I'm going to close that group. So I've got 3 different paint splodges which I've used here. So I'm going to close the assets down again because they take up so much space on the screen, and I don't need that one anymore. So now you need sort of to add like the embellishments, in the sense of I had that swirling paint image here, but I'm going to need a background. So again, much like before, I'm going to click on one of these icons up here, and one of them is insert behind selection, because currently the selection is this layer here. So if I do insert behind selection, when I click on make a new layer, which by default would put it above the selection, it should now put it below the selection. So I'm just going to fill this with a colour, so I'm going to use the flood fill tool. Now I'm going to use black, but you could use whatever colour you wanted. So as you can see, I do have sort of some areas that were quite black here, but I could have made a better job of that, but it's not too bad. But like I said, you could have filled this with any colour, but I personally think it works best in black. So now we're going to need this like background colour and paint swirler, I should say. So again, I'm going to open up the assets, and this is where having a keyboard shortcut is quick and easy, because you can pick whichever, open up the assets quickly. So I'm going to just center that. I'm going to select this brush here, bring it onto screen. Again, I'm going to rotate that round and reduce its size. And because the black background layer was the one highlighted, it has placed it above that, and I wanted this sort of paint to sort of be coming out of the top of her head swirling around and going behind the dancer. And I can now make this a bit bigger to fit a bit better, so I'm going to go like that. Now paint wise they're sort of very similar colours, so just to make them slightly different I'm going to change this blending mode to hard light, which does sort of get rid of some of the colours within there, but I'm also going to change the colours slightly. So again I'm going to, this is insert inside selection, I'm going to select that, then get the adjustment for HSL, and as you can see that HSL adjustment has now been made a child layer of just that swirl of paint there. So I'm just going to move the hue slider around to find a sort of colour setting that I quite like the look of, and you could increase and lower the luminosity. Yes, I think that looks quite good. Yes, let me shut the assets down. So yeah, I will leave that at that. I mean, obviously I could have made better choices in where I put the paint and not miss these areas on the hand and down here in the torso, and also I may have missed a little bit round her face, but as you can see that it's not too bad, it's quite good. And you could then add text, you know, saying like dance troupe show May 2022 and use it as a poster for, you know, that particular dance troupe, or you know, whatever you want to use as your silhouette. Because say for example, like if I can find it, I think it might be this one. Except it hasn't opened it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so this singer silhouette, you know, much like before, you can, you know, just use a silhouette, and like I said, it doesn't matter what colour it is, but using, I mean, let's use the smoke. I think I've got some smoke assets here. You could bring this in to here, and much like before, you could do insert inside selection and then pick the recolor option, and then you could, if you move the lightness slightly to the right, you could then recolor this any color you wanted. Let's say like that color there, and then select that group and then go to arrange and move inside, so that will move that smoke into the silhouette. And then with the move tool selected, you could position it, you know, rotate it and fill up with this particular texture however you want. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be paint splodges, it could be smoke, it could be some other texture. Where have I got here? I mean, let's just use a texture like this for example. So that has just filled the silhouette, mainly because I had that smoke layer highlighted, it's just placed it above. But as you can see, it doesn't really matter what the texture is, you can clip it to the silhouette. So hopefully that is everything explained as best I can, and thank you for watching. Before I go, I just want to tack on the end of this video a mistake that I spotted while editing, is the fact I forgot to change blend modes. And this is why when I made the image there were sort of these black areas is where files were overlapping. So just to point out where I went wrong is where these two files are in the silhouette, where this top one, which is this one here, is above the one below, you're sort of getting the black area of this image showing up on the one below. So we need to sort of change the blend mode. So the best one for this is lighten, and I'll click on that, and as you can see that now blends in much better and you don't have those black areas. So if I then fill this other arm up here, and I'll pick a different one and I'll bring this onto the screen, reduce its size to roughly where I want it. Let's put that there. Control 0 to bring this back to size, and then I will, because this is above that dancer, again I'll come to arrange, move inside. So as you can see, those black areas are now covering up the layers below. So if I change that to lighten, that will blend in much better, and I can move this around. It's not to say that it's not still affecting it slightly, but you'll get a much better sort of look and feel. So that way you haven't got so many overlapping areas that are affecting each other, and you don't necessarily have to stick to lighten. I'm sure there are other options that might work just as well. See difference, exclusion, but lighten will probably be your best way to go, and avoid having overlapping dark areas that will cause you possible problems. So sorry for making that error. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.